McClintock. Congressman McClintock, it's always a pleasure. Welcome back to Freedom Watch.
It's my pleasure, Judge. Thanks for having me.
What did you think of the announcement that Secretary Geithner made today? We did reach the debt ceiling. The sky didn't fall. He didn't say that part. I added that part. But he said in order to fund the government, they are raiding the pension funds of federal employees. That would be you, as well as the many, many other hundreds of thousands of federal employees. The money is put there in trust for you, and the government's now raiding it. What do you think about that?
Well, the point is that the Treasury Secretary does have the authority and the responsibility to manage the funds of the federal government, in part to support the full faith and credit of the United States. So by doing so, he's sort of put the lie to the claim that if we exceed the debt limit, we will default on our debts. The fact is we have more than enough revenue coming in to service the debt of the United States, if it's managed properly.
He doesn't literally raid the pension funds. He just declines to make contributions to them. So he takes money that comes in. He takes money that comes in from the taxpayers, which was dedicated to those pension funds, and instead of sending them there, he either pays the debt service, or he sends a check to the Pentagon, or he funds the other parts of the government. So, and at one point, he's doing what you or I would go to jail if we did. If we owned a company and raided the pension funds, we'd go to jail. On the other hand, he does demonstrate your point that he doesn't have to go out into the financial markets in order to keep the lights and the heat on.
Exactly. About 60% of our spending is covered by revenues right now. Less than 10% is for debt service. So reaching and exceeding the debt limit does not require a default of the United States on its full faith and credit.
As I recall, Congressman McClintock, you introduced legislation called the Full Faith and Credit Act. And as I recall from our prior discussions of it, Congressman, if enacted, it would force the government to pay the debt service first. Who could possibly object to such legislation? Why could Geithner and company possibly not want that?
Well, that's Obama and Geithner's point of leverage. They feel that if they can threaten the default of the United States on its debt service, then the Republicans will have no choice but to ultimately cave in and give them anything they want. And that's just a bad law and bad history. You go back to the enacting legislation that established the Department of the Treasury. It vests in the Treasury Secretary the responsibility and the authority to manage funds to support the debt.
Do you think that there's a chance that the debt ceiling won't go up, that the Republicans will not get an offer from the White House that they find acceptable or credible, that they will stick to their guns and say, the public does not want any more borrowing? Mr. President, you collect $250 billion a month in taxes. That's enough with which to run the government. Go ahead and decide how to spend it.
Well, Judge, to say that the debt limit not be increased from here is to say that we have a plan to immediately balance the budget. No such plan exists. The promises that this government has made have been so completely skewed away from the revenues it's collecting. I don't have a plan like that, and I don't know anybody who does. But it would be utterly irresponsible to increase the debt limit until there is a plan to bring spending back under control, because as we've been warned by economists from left to right, we have between 2 and 5 years to get our spending under control, to bring our finances back into responsible range before we will have an actual sovereign debt crisis, an actual default, and ultimately the financial collapse of the United States government.
What will it look like?
We have one moment to prevent, and that moment is now.
Okay. What would the debt crisis look like? What would happen to average folks who are watching us now? What would happen to their banks? What would happen to their loans? What would happen to their ability to conduct their lives if the government defaulted because it simply couldn't raise taxes? People wouldn't pay the taxes. It didn't make enough money to pay the taxes, and nobody would loan it money anymore.
Well, that's the whole point. The federal government simply runs out of money. Before you can provide for the common defense or promote the general welfare, you have to be able to finance it. And the ability of our government to do so is coming into grave doubt if we continue down this path much longer.
We've got about 30 seconds. Your prediction, what will happen? Will the debt ceiling go up? Will the Republicans let the president borrow money in return for some promise? Or will the Republicans say, no, Mr. President, live within your means?
Well, one of two things will happen. Either the Republicans will stand firm, we will bring our spending back under control and avert a sovereign debt crisis, or we will continue down the path we are on, and that ends up in a very bad place very rapidly. Those are the choices, and it's pretty clear which one this country has to take.
Congressman Tom McClintock, it's a pleasure. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Judge.
My next guest is also a firm opponent